Okay, we're back, and I went ahead and skipped a couple of slides in regard to how we break the bystander effect. Feel free to check those out. But I'm going to jump right to anonymity. Now, I did use some pretty extreme examples here, so bear with me. This isn't how it always works. It's just the easiest way to explain it. So crowds don't always make people bad. I just have to make that clear. Crowds can be peaceful. So, here we go. So imagine being a part of a large crowd. Nobody knows your name. Everybody looks the same to a certain degree. If you did something, nobody would be able to identify that it was your actions. Responsibilities kind of shared, and the attention's on the group, not on you. Are you going to behave the exact same way as you would when you're alone or in other situations? And these settings might include things like, again, crowds, sporting events, if you're out in a costume, or if you do a job that you're in a uniform for, if you're on social media, if you're at a party. This gets us into the concept of de-individuation. So it's where your individual identity and self-awareness become less salient. So what happens? Your individual identity becomes less apparent. Your self-awareness then becomes less apparent. And so your accountability for anything may feel smaller. Any sort of group or situational cues may be more influential as well. Now you're not losing your entire identity, but here's kind of the way that some people start to think in these situations. And like, what would I normally do? When that would be when you're just on a day-to-day basis. But if you're in one of these groups, you might start to think like, what are we doing? My behavior isn't very identifiable. And again, anonymity doesn't always make people worse. And it's not whether anonymity removes restraint from behavior. It's what becomes influential when identity becomes less prominent. And it depends upon the group here. So the traditional view is anonymity does reduce self-awareness and accountability, reducing restraint, and making people more impulsive and antisocial. That's the traditional view. And that is the perspective that I'm using here because we've seen it too often in contemporary spaces. That's not always the case, though. I just have to make that clear. And the behavior that is going to become more prominent is based upon whatever the group norms are. If the group norms are impulsive, individuals' behavior is going to become more impulsive. Antisocial, more antisocial. Pro-social, more pro-social. Peace-loving, more peace-loving. So the behavior is going to follow group norms. So you're really asking, what does this group do specifically? And that's the type of behavior that individuals that are de-individuated are going to take on. So the group norms are what are going to matter here. So like a sports crowd, the norm might be hostility, depending upon what type of crowd here, or collective support. Online, again, anonymity doesn't automatically create cruelty. It depends upon probably the space or the social media group. So reduced individual identity, it can make the social identity and norms of the groups more influential. But if it is a group that is based upon force, violence, power, corruption, and an individual becomes more anonymous, is less accountable, and those are the group norms, they're more likely to take on those behaviors themselves. Those group norms are going to shape their behavior. We can harken back to conformity in that way. So when individual identity becomes less important, the group norms become even more important. And so anonymity doesn't tell us what people will do. We need to know that what behavior the group supports. That will enhance the chances we understand what the individual do. And so this brings us to one of the most famous but controversial studies in psychological history. 1971, Philip Zimbardo and colleagues conducted the Stanford Prison Experiment. And this is when young men, predominantly college students, were randomly assigned to be either guards or prisoners. And a mock prison was built in the basement of Stanford's psychology building. And so the study was planned for 2 weeks. It ended in 6 days, if that kind of tells you how well this went. The prisoners, they were actually arrested at home. They were booked. They were given uniforms, ID numbers. They were given routines and rules. Uh, Their their identity was actually reduced. They became more anonymous. The guards, on the other hand, they got uniforms. They got the sunglasses. You can see that in the picture even, and they worked actual shifts. And the traditional account here is that some guards actually became abusive and started to humiliate the prisoners. And prisoners started to show distress, and it actually overwhelmed ordinary behavior. And historically, this study has been interpreted as like the power of social rules. And when we're given specific social rules, how we take them on. And again, this goes back to what we were talking about with de-individuation. And that our individual identity may start to dissipate when we become a part of a certain group, and our behavior may take on that of the group norms of that group. And so, in regard to this, what we need to know before concluding that the prison situation itself caused the guards' behavior. So we need to go just beyond that. Now, were they left to behave naturally? Did they all behave the same way? So here's the thing about this study is this interpretation in totality has been challenged. There were issues related to the guard orientation and instructions, guard behavior, participant self-selection, problems with treating the study as clean evidence as well. So usually that's where everything stops, and we just consider it to be a very famous study. So that's um, that's all well and good, but the reality of this is it's much more complex. Okay. The work and analysis of this study, there's a lot of questions and concerns about the validity of this study. Um, the researcher involvement and the incomplete and biased data collection as well. Not all guards became abusive. The replication issues. So, in regard to this, it's a good story. It's a good story. It's a good baseline to start to understand a variety of psychological concepts in social psychology, but it's not compelling evidence for this necessarily. It does a good job of starting to discuss ethics and research design and overgeneralization. So, in regard to this, and so that's why I don't spend a lot of time with the Stanford Prison Experiment, because it is a great story. It's just it's not compelling evidence. And just because it's famous, it does not mean it's definitive. Zimbardo did not do great work. I have confidence in saying that. So, with this, how do groups change us? And then I'm going to break this off again, and then we'll get back to group decision making. The presence of others can change, again, how we perform, how much effort we put in, how we interpret a situation, whether it's our responsibility to do anything, And then how does it affect how we see ourselves and the resulting behavior as well? And the thing is groups don't affect us just in one way. They just change the social situation in which we behave, for that matter. And I will stop there once again and return with group decision making.